Welcome, everybody, to MSP's RevX Fest, RevOps Renaissance, leading in a volatile market. No secret that RevOps is ever-changing and rapidly evolving. Operators need to prepare for anything and everything, including market volatility, while maintaining the company's rhythm. We are lucky enough to be joined today by a stellar set of panelists who have worked at companies like AWS, Adobe, and Microsoft, to name a few. And they are here today to bestow their RevOps wisdom on us. Let's give them a quick hand. Thank you for joining us, ladies. Before we jump into the discussion, we'll do a round of intros. And since it's October and we're almost officially in holiday season, I'd love to hear which holiday you guys cannot wait to celebrate each year. I'm Allie Seibel. I am the Director of Revenue Operations for Groove at Clary. I RevOps the you-know-what out of everything, both personally and professionally. My husband hates it. I'm a diehard Christmas lover. If it were up to me, our Christmas decorations would be up from November 1st through February 1st. And Mariah's All I Want for Christmas Is You would be my morning anthem. So that's me and my favorite holiday. Bailey, I'm going to kick it over to you for an intro.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Bailey Fessler. I'm the Director of RevOps at Exactly. I just hit my 1 year at Exactly. Also passionate about all things revenue operations across, people, process, and technology, the big three. My favorite holiday has got to be Thanksgiving, and not just because of the meal, but I love all Friendsgiving adjacent activities. And since moving to Denver, I make a migration back to the Bay Area, and with that group of friends, we have Winesgiving, and it's the best.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for being here. Brooke.
Well, I have to say I agree on the Friendsgiving, but so I'm Brooke Tressiter. I am the head of RevOps at Volt. We are an open banking payments company headquartered in London. Previous to that, I was working for another payments company in London. So originally from the Bay Area, but I'm in London. And my favorite holiday between now and the end of the year is definitely Friendsgiving. There's a group of us that are expats living in London, and we'd love to get together and have a big Friendsgiving and rent a big country house somewhere out in the Cotswolds or something and get together. And I generally last year gave a speech at Volt about the meaning of Thanksgiving because I was the only American at the company, which has been a first for me. And half of them didn't know what Thanksgiving was. So I had to explain to them why it was the best holiday. So yeah, I'm definitely a big Thanksgiving fan.
Oh, that's funny. And that sounds awesome, renting a countryside house to celebrate that. Thanks for sharing. Danielle.
Yes, Danielle Marquis, VP of RevOps at a company called Zappy, not Zapier. We are a consumer insights SaaS platform, so trying to digitize the world of market research. And when it comes to holidays, I'm very lucky that we still have my grandmother around. So Christmas by far is definitely my favorite holiday, just because all the immediate cousins and aunts and uncles still get together on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. So I still act a lot younger than I actually am around that holiday, which is always fun. I think it's kind of also like part of that season. So
yeah, I think everyone likes to act a little bit more like their childhood self during the holidays. I feel like it's just part of the season, and I definitely feel you on that. Last but not least, Meg.
Hey, my name is Meg Getch. Although I am a sales ops leader today, I have a deep RevOps background and love for the function. I am going to go with the group favorite. Thanksgiving is absolutely my favorite. I love cooking for friends and family. I've been doing a Friendsgiving since 2009. We like to say we invented it. I'm sure that's totally not true. But yeah, really excited for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for introducing yourselves, and thanks for sharing that little bit about your favorite holidays. And without further ado, let's jump right in. So one of the things we've seen this year is just market volatility. And I would love to kind of hear from you guys how companies are reinventing their RevOps strategies to deal with that. Bailey, I know that you and Danielle spoke about this at Camp Modern Sales not too long ago, maybe 3 months ago. And I'm wondering what you've seen, if anything, in those past 3 months to kind of change what your answer was maybe back then, or kind of inform like how people are reinventing their strategies to deal with the volatility.
Yeah, I think a lot of that still holds true. about, you know, like getting the most out of any technology you have installed currently, but it's also given my org the opportunity to really dive into like, what are we doing that's working well and what can we eliminate maybe that's superfluous, or are we doing extra things that aren't focused to like our core values or our core methodologies we're leveraging. So I guess just really getting ruthless about it.
When you say getting the most out of the technology that you have, does that include any sort of like consolidation or minimizing your tech stack where you're maybe not getting value?
Some of that for sure. In my case, in my org, we're kind of in the middle of a lot of like multi-year contracts with vendors. So it's like, how can we extract the most value if we're going to be in this contract anyway?
Yeah. Are you seeing it on the flip side too? Like your team's trying to sell more multi-year deals because you're trying to make sure that revenue's coming in?
100%. A lot more product swaps too.
Cool. Danielle, what about you? Anything changed since you spoke at Camp MSP?
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily change from how we might have talked about it then, but the evolution a little bit since then on just expanding some of the talking about getting back to basics with other teams, right? I think it's really, I talk to my team a lot about what's in our control, and just being really empathetic that like, yeah, we're pretty, pretty bogged down with a lot of requests coming in or questions, because obviously when you're in a volatile scenario, RevOps as end customers are typically sales and or CS or marketing, and you get a little bit more urgency on requests that typically could wait a week, right? Not that we're all rock stars and get on that stuff quickly, but just really making sure that we're not just the only ones that we know are doing a lot more with a lot less, but remembering so are our coworkers. So everything if we're setting up a meeting, does that meeting actually have to happen? Is there anything we can do async before we get a whole bunch of people on a call when we know everyone's calendars are pretty precious? Is there any type of pre-work we could get out so that the meeting goes faster or more productive? So those are a lot of the things, just trying to either help coach my own team on, because we can be leaders in some of that operational thinking, or just encourage them to ask and speak up with other meetings they're being invited to, right? Protect their time as well. And so it's kind of that nice to have to have, and I think I talked a lot about it with the tech stack previously, but evolving that, like, it's not just your tech stack, right? It's, to Bailey's point, I forgot who said it, but like the people, process, technology, right? We're holistically helping keep that train on the tracks. So across the board, what do the meetings that were just kind of like check-ins, do you need to have them? Maybe you need to actually add a check-in on an initiative that's been slowing down and needs to perk up in this time of volatility. So
yeah, I think the pre-work or the async work and being wise about how you use your time is so important, especially now that we're being asked to do more with less. Time is our most precious resource, and spending the first 15 minutes of a 30-minute meeting talking about why you're meeting or explaining like the project is just not a good use of anyone's time. So I definitely feel that sentiment as well. Meg, do you have anything to add about, seeing companies reinventing their RevOps strategies?
Yeah, I think it's just a common theme of what's been said, but what do you say no to? Just like giving your team and then the teams you support the ability to focus, and especially focusing in on those areas you're already doing well, you're seeing the growth and traction even in this changing market. How do you just let people narrow in? It's what you say no to that can actually be the most impactful in that, when you're restricted with resources. And then I also think on the metric side, it's really being thoughtful too on the metrics that matter, and not just trying to have 100 metrics, but how do you narrow in on the 5 that you're trying to move across your go-to-market teams, and driving also that cross-functional alignment, having everyone kind of aligned with the same set of metrics that you're driving towards. And then the last piece, which is kind of similar, is agility. Like, how can you build agility into your go-to-market motion so that if something comes out of left field, or you do realize you need to double down on something, you're able to do that without being too restricted by either a policy or whatever it is that's kind of holding you back. Because I think the thing I've seen is just that thrash that can happen when it's like, oh no, we just saw this customer take this turn. Like, what does that mean for all the other customers? Like, when can you take, step back, make sure you're focusing, and then also making sure you can make that movement in a way that's not going to impact, folks negatively.
Are you seeing, in terms of like, maybe you had a roadmap and the market volatility hit, in the beginning of kind of like the year, end of Q1, have you seen kind of like your roadmaps in terms of projects and like, hey, this was a really important thing we wanted to do, maybe talk about pricing and packaging or moving down or upstream. Have you seen that kind of change over the past couple of months or quarters because of this, I keep saying market volatility, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I think I've been seeing it for a couple of years. There was like, especially in like the wealth that was COVID, it was like, let's do everything. Let's go to those next 2 ICPs or that next customer segment. Now it's all about, no, let's just do what we're really great at and go as deep and like powerfully as possible into that area and just hold on to our market share.
Exactly. Brooke, besides, teaching your company about Thanksgiving, are you seeing your company or any of your customers reinventing their RevOps strategies in this market?
Yeah, so I'd say for us, we're in kind of a newer market and what we're offering with open banking. And so a lot of this is new, but we generally all come from payments companies. And the thing that is kind of your bread and butter in our world is your merchant experience. So our customers are merchants, they sell things online. And we have to do a lot of due diligence before we can sign them up as customers. So my old software days, if someone would sign a DocuSign, they were a customer. Now in our world, you have to vet them, make sure that they meet all of your fiduciary responsibilities, your compliance responsibilities. And so that journey to get merchants onboarded is really important, that it's a good experience, right? Because you need to ask them for a lot of information and you're validating them. And they often will work with a number of different companies in similar sort of offerings. And so what you offer is the experience to onboard and then become live with you and processing with you. And so we have a real focus right now around aligning just merchant experience and the merchant journey and aligning, from the revenue operations side, which is we're issuing the quotes or the contracts, to how do we hand it off to compliance. We don't ask the same question multiple times because often it's like, you fill out the form and then how do we hand this off to solution engineering so the merchant gets integrated and set up on their website, and then they're processing and they're happy and they're getting the comms that they need. And so we have a big sort of merchant journey focus that we're doing right now, which is how can marketing assist during this journey? How do we align with compliance and RevOps and the operations team? And so it's kind of this massive it feels like half the company at some point in time touches merchant experience. And we're trying to really define who owns what during the journey, and the handoff is smooth. And it's still, we're still early days of this, but what's great is that everyone is focused as this as a top goal for us. And so in RevOps, my first kind of priority is seller experience, right? Mm-hmm. So my sellers, are they having a good experience? And then my merchant experience, right? And if I can optimize for those two things, we're doing pretty well, right? I can't impact the product that we're delivering, but these are kind of the areas that I can impact. So that's kind of, so for me, when I first started in RevOps was a lot more about like comp plans and Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And now it's a lot more about like aligning the entire journey as a customer comes in. It's not just the deal desk that issues the quote or calculate the commissions. It's like, how do we make sure everything through the whole journey is good? And I've, good group of people that I'm excited to build this with. So yeah.
I think that's so key. And I think I've talked about this on like several other like webinars or podcasts about the customer experience. Like we've all bought tools before, like we manage biz apps and tech stacks. And for me, like, yeah, the product and pricing is definitely part of it, but the experience I have when I'm buying the product, I feel like is definitely an indication of what it's going to be like being a customer. And I have fully like looked at two tools. They're apples to apples 100%, and gone with the tool where I felt not just like a number was on my forehead, but they actually wanted to know what was driving me looking at this tool, what kind of ROI and what the impact I was really looking for. And I think the same thing comes to when you churn. Like, are you going to renew a tool where like you don't really feel like you're a valued customer, your onboarding was garbage, and like you have to send 14 emails to get a response and you don't even know if you're sending it to the right person. So I think that is part of a strategy. You can, work on getting new customers, but if you're not focused on keeping them happy, then you don't have a strategy at all. Meg kind of touched on metrics a little bit earlier, and I think, thinking about what metrics are relevant in today's kind of uncertain sales landscape is super important to think about, especially as we go into 2024 planning and beyond. Like, what are you going to be looking for your sales reps and even your SDRs and the rest of the revenue generating teams to do? Danielle, you had a great LinkedIn post from a few months ago. You were at some event with Ops Focus, I think it was, and you were talking about, the roller coaster of an economy and how it impacts strategic thinking, and specifically the do more with less mentality and stop overcomplicating your sales process and metrics. I would love to kind of get a little bit more from you about kind of how you're rethinking metrics, or even like what more of that discussion you had about kind of how other people are rethinking them as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a repeat record specifically this year, but I think it does fall into some of my RevOps mentality around one of our roles is to help bring clarity on executing others' ideas sometimes, right? A lot of times they're our own. Sometimes it's someone coming to you with a problem or whatnot that you need to execute. So back to basics is always a really strong kind of mental mantra, because it's so easy to, especially when you get in the world Brooke's talking about the journey metrics and what are all the different steps along your journey, and could we be, measuring everything from this to this to this to this so that we know where we're breaking down. And at the end of the day, you typically have a couple big milestones, and if you don't have clarity on those, that's where you need to start. So when we're talking about getting better insight around how we're actually going to end up at the end of the year, going back to your basic sales ops KPIs. If we're talking about the sales world, obviously RevOps, we have varying responsibilities across the different departments. But if we're talking about even getting money in, getting new logos in, taking a step back. And I just had a conversation with our sales leadership today of like, stop overanalyzing the number of emails going back and forth. I mean, at this point, you could have 5 emails just trying to accept a meeting these days. So, what are you actually focusing on? You're trying to get a qualified, engaged meeting or a conversation going, right? That's a milestone to be looking at. You're going to have playbooks to help you get there, but like, look at those conversion points and just like we set up sales process for reps on an opportunity, set up literally entry exit criteria across your customer journey. And if you don't know your customer or buyer journey, start there. Brooke, you're spot on. You cannot make any really confident decisions on whether you're doing something right or wrong for who you're serving if you don't actually understand what the steps, the true stages, steps, entry exit criteria are there. So with our sales leadership, we're going back to basics. What us as a RevOps team are trying to introduce to Zappy as a whole, so that we are bringing other departments in, not just sales, but also everything growth marketing is doing to literally amplify pipeline and sales. So we have our customer journey. We had a huge initiative this past year. We just launched our first vision of our customer journey metrics. It's literally the top line customer journey stages with entry exit criteria and conversion metrics. And we are going to start there. And the reason I say back to basics is we need to prove out that foundational thinking, and those steps are actually what our customers back into, right? Before we can go down that next layer and understand, okay, we're getting stuck at this stage. Now we can start to say, okay, where do we need to slice the onion at this stage to understand where we actually need to make changes? And the idea there is we start to embed that thinking in all these, like if product has a roadmap coming out, what are they trying to impact from a customer journey? Or if they're looking to see what we need to prioritize for the next 3 quarters, right? Or marketing campaigns. We know we only have a finite amount of people, mental capacity, all of it, money. So if we're going to spend money on that, if we're going to ask our outbound team, our sales team, our marketing team to drop things and work on this, are we impacting the right level of our journey so that we're not just kind of like throwing things at a wall and hoping they stick, which, as you're in a growth phase, sometimes you do that just to experiment. But
just for the everyone that's joined us, so if they're like, hey, that sounds like a really good idea to introduce kind of like exit and entry criteria for the customer journey. but they want to be realistic with like how much time and effort goes into it. You know, how long from, you know, you pitch this to the leaders, they agreed to it, to rolling it out, has it taken you, just so we can get kind of like a gut check of like how realistic it is for some of these smaller, leaner teams to roll that out at their own orgs?
Yeah, and it all comes down to how much you want to overcomplicate it. I would get your scope very clear and have almost a police in the room that's like, that's scope creeping what we're trying to get to. For Zappy, we put together our customer journey stages and tried to do this a couple of years ago. It kind of failed because it didn't have the right cross-functional lean in. And so this one, we kicked off this initiative last mid to end of last October. So just about a year before we've gotten leadership signed off on that first round metrics, all of the reasoning and context behind it. But the team was RevOps heavy. So we had 3 consistent members of RevOps on the team. We had our head of BI, who's also just got hands in everything. We had someone that understands a lot more of the under the hood marketing, all the other aspects of marketing. And then we pulled in people as needed. So it was a lot of discovery that we did async, and we'd meet, say, sometimes we met once a month if we had really busy schedules, and sometimes we met weekly as a sprint planning there. So it's really what you want to dedicate to it and how complex you want to make your deliverable.
Awesome. Thank you for that context. Appreciate it. Bailey, you said you just hit your 1 year mark or thereabouts. Congrats. In terms of the metrics that you were asked to kind of like keep an eye on when you first started, have those kind of continued on throughout the past year and some change, or have you seen kind of things shift with the market shifting a little bit? I would love to get kind of your insights on that.
I would say we refined them a little bit. So, you know, like opportunity aging, especially with like your new logo opportunities, is always a key one. And what we were finding, you know, in the economy we're in, a lot of people were holding on to their opportunities because they were worried about accounts getting reassigned. So we've had to do some reinforcement there and some work. And we do company book clubs sometimes with sales reading. So that newer book from Matt Dixon and the Challenger Sale, The Jolt Effect, has been a big one for us. And we've been looking into a lot more of the stats, not only around competitive losses, but around losses that were maybe from status quo or no decision, and how do we nurture or target those accounts differently, or maybe have like a different cadence of outreach for them, as well as just getting a lot of those, to Danielle's point, a lot of the handoffs to customer success, professional service, getting those really refined so that we're not, Brooke, I think you mentioned this too, so we're not asking customers, prospects to like give us the same information that they've already provided earlier in a cycle, and just really, really honing in on that process kind of while we have that extra ability to focus on it right now in the current conditions.
Yeah, I think kind of like going back to what I think it was Danielle that said, you know, the maybe talking about quality of metrics versus just quantity. Like, who cares about how many emails you sent? Like, it could literally be just confirming your coffee meetup. But obviously, quality of, you know, email sent and phone calls made is a little bit harder to track. I think for me, when I was an SDR, number of calls was my biggest metric. I had to have so many a day or so many a week, or I got like asked why I wasn't doing things. And I think looking at the other kinds of communication your teams are doing, whether that's like LinkedIn outreach, LinkedIn messaging, in-person meetings, texting, whatever it may be, like including the whole picture, because you don't just close a deal on emails. You have to have meetings, and you have to have certain types of meetings, and understanding which meetings move the needles and which ones maybe just are placeholders for a just in case are super important to understand, kind of like the differences between the two. Meg or Brooke, do you have anything to add about metrics before we move along?
I would say like some of the metrics we've used, there's a company, Winning by Design, that I believe is headquartered in Europe, but does some stuff in the US as well. And I did the revenue architecture class last December. It's like a 5 or 6 course hour, you know, couple hours each, 6 different sessions. And in there and on their website, they have this as well. They talk about the most important metrics you should be tracking in your business. And a lot of it is around funnel conversion. So what we've already said, but so I would just say is if you're more nerdy into this, they have some great resources on their website that I would look at, because I often refer other people over to here's some good stuff. And Insight Partners, we were a portco of those of theirs at checkout, and they have some good stuff on their website around the metrics they use to measure their portcos, and that again, like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel at this point in time. There's only so many metrics you could track. Just trying to figure out what are the right 4 or 5 that are the most important. And I generally start with, okay, what does winning by design say? What does insight say? And it's a good baseline.
I think you've made a really great point, Brooke, is like, yeah, we're iterating on some things, but we're not reinventing the wheel, and working smarter, not harder, especially being asked to do more with less, and like looking at the resources that are available to us is super important for us to, make good use of our time, which has been a recurring theme in this discussion. Meg, I know you just started in July, so a couple months ago. When you started, were there any sort of metrics that you were asked to track that you were like, these aren't important anymore, like the market has changed, or anything that you've tried to introduce in your few short months there that you maybe want to carry over into like next year's planning?
Yeah, for sure. It's like not even 3 months and we're in the thick of annual planning. So a little bit of like still in a tizzy learning everything. I think one thing that I'm seeing is just there's actually not like a consistent framework of metrics across the different cross-functional teams. And so that can cause a lot of confusion because you're talking about one part of pipeline when someone's thinking about another, and there's just a lot of cross wires. So actually something that I'm working on is just like, how do we actually define the key metrics that we're looking at? How do we report on them on a regular basis, get people familiar with them? And also, how do we have insights? So made a point earlier, like, does this need to be a meeting? Does this need to be an email? Actually, there was a lot of meetings where we weren't actually even like diving into the numbers, but we were trying to talk to them. And so I'm trying to, let's get the data in front of folks. Let's look into dashboards, and then like think about how we do the insights and learning together through those metrics in like an effective forum. So I don't have the answer to all that yet, but that's just kind of the things I was seeing of just not having a consistent framework around metrics.
Yeah, I think that kind of segues nicely into our next topic, which is about alignment. And one of the things you said is like defining what the metrics actually are. Because if, team A is saying a meeting equals this and team B is looking at it this way, or even like marketing and sales are looking at the same dashboard, but interpreting it different because they have different definitions of things, just leads to chaos and, is not the recipe for alignment. So I'm curious, as you guys kind of think about next year, maybe look at some learnings from the past couple of years and think about how to ensure alignment across all the revenue generating functions, what kind of those key takeaways are, and kind of like what you think your company is doing or you've talked to other companies about. Meg, I know you're a co-founder of the Women in Revenue Marketing. I'd love to hear if any of the other ladies on that have talked about kind of alignment, especially because RevOps, marketing, CS, you have to have it all. You can't just have alignment between 2 of the orgs or departments. You have to have alignment across all of it. So I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, I think that, so one thing that's great about what Forder's done is there's just like 5 top level metrics that all the executives are being held to for next year. And so that's great at driving alignment. You kind of build your OKR framework from there. But then I think what I'm seeing is as you go like layers down into the teams, it's like, okay, so how do you build up to know that you're on track with those metrics? And that's where I'm trying to build out those common definitions, and also helping teams understand, like, if it's getting early stage pipeline progressing, like that's going to be partnership with marketing, with your sales development, and with sales. Like it's not one party. And so that's kind of some of the work that I'm doing just being early days and getting to learn a business. I think from my Women in Revenue Marketing group has been a little quiet since COVID, but what was great when we got those ladies together in New York is just hearing from so many different industries and like use cases of small companies, larger, and just I always found the pain points were very similar regardless of what kind of context you're in. And what was great about that networking group is just like everyone being supportive of each other. Like, I know what it feels like when, you're trying so hard to move the needle here and you're not getting that buy-in over there. So to me, it's all about like, let's make sure we've got the top line metrics that we're aligned to, but we know how you build up to those, and everyone's agreeing on the same definitions and reports.
Yeah, I think having that kind of like top level alignment or having those company wide objectives that you're working towards can really drive kind of what you say yes to and what you say not now or no to. So thanks for sharing that. Bailey, I'm going to call on you next. Anything that you have, any sort of insight into how you can ensure alignment for your revenue generating teams?
Yeah, well, being a RevOps leader at primarily an incentive compensation company has been really fun. So a lot of our alignment is driven through common incentives. So in the comp plan specifically, we'll have some overlapping metrics that hit on lead gen, account executives, account managers, and customer success, so that ultimately all of our field organization is working on that customer's experience and the customers having the best experience. So anywhere we can make sure our teams aren't battling with each other and that they're working together, that's been a big one for us. In addition to what Meg was saying, and Danielle too, about having those common definitions across orgs, so that, like, I can line up with marketing ops and make sure we're looking at things the same way.
Yeah, I think that that's super important and seems to be a common theme in our discussion today. Brooke, I would love for any insights that you can add.
So we actually have been completely sales led at Volt, and we just recently hired a marketing leader, and we've been talking about having a go-to-market workshop because we don't have, it's interesting because most companies I've been at, marketing was there before RevOps. They kind of were early funnel stuff. And now we have a marketing team that we've hired in, and we need to get a marketing automation and all these other things. And so we're kind of doing the basics, like what is our ICP, what are our buyer personas, and getting agreement there. So I think we're probably so early on our journey, and it's great because someone comes in and you start the relationship off well. It's great when they're aligned. So, I mean, I just kind of said, here's what I wrote out 9 months ago. Here's my draft, how do we define an SQL or an MQL, blow it up however you want. I'm fine with it. And so I think in the journey I'm at right now, we just need to get all our leaders, sales leaders, marketing leaders in a room and decide, where we're going to market next year. And so we just have to build something from scratch, which you sometimes forget to take it for granted when you're starting all over. So exciting journey, but yeah, we don't have alignment. We just need to build something. That's kind of what I'd say where we are.
I think one of the things one of the ways that I think about things is like future me and current me. So like if I didn't have a marketing team, future me would be thinking about like, okay, are we currently tracking at least titles or like contact roles and the opportunities so that when we do get marketing, we can analyze it to see what our ICP and our buyer persona is. When you found out you were hiring in marketing, was there anything that you were like, heck yeah, I've been tracking this, like we've got this data, we can use it for XYZ? Or on the flip side, you were like, oh, sugar plums, like I wish I would have been doing that for the past however long, and now we're gonna have to start from ground zero, like either the good or the bad, tell me whichever, or both.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I have been working to get like roles on opportunities. Reps are generally terrible at that. And there are tools out there that will automate it and add them to the op because it really helps with like attribution, especially as you're doing multi-touch attribution. But we're not even really there yet. One of the things I did early on was implement campaigns so we could at least track where leads, like as something came into the funnel, like where did it, like trade shows or LinkedIn campaigns. And it's very basic because again, we don't have a marketing automation tool right now. So we were just kind of native Salesforce campaigns, which those of you that know Salesforce, like we were manually importing into the campaigns for member status sort of stuff, a bit wonky, I mean, it's like our web to lead, we're using Salesforce web to lead form, which was like, I don't think anyone's used in 10 years, but it's very basic, right? But until you get your marketing leader in, it was like, let's just make sure, because before I had joined, leads were going into like a form or, like an Excel spreadsheet. So my base level, like, let's keep the lights on until the leaders get here was have at least a lead source we could track. So where were leads coming from? And then like a validation rule so you couldn't change the lead sources. Mm-hmm. Get leads into campaigns so we could at least see, we had this many people at an event and this many people responded. and then base level contact roles on ops to varying level degrees. So, I mean, and then we kind of bucketed the lead sources: marketing sourced, sales sourced, partner channel sourced. So basic data dictionary is what I did, and then made sure we could track it. And then it said, okay, it's not so bad. Like we did the web to lead form. So at least leads were coming into Salesforce. They used to come into our shared sales and then a sales leader would say, you work on this. And then it never made it into Salesforce, which obviously pained me as a RevOps leader. So that was like my base level, keep the lights on until the cavalry came to help us actually do it the right way.
Right. Well, you're still in your dating phase of alignment. So even just like the basic stuff that you're talking about is great. You don't want to like rush into marriage when you're still trying to get to know the marketing team and see kind of what is really important and what you need to build versus what you can do now. And I feel your pain about the sales at email address. Many moons ago, when the company I worked at used WordPress, I had to check the back end of WordPress because the leads just were going nowhere. So I would just print them out and put them on an SDR's desk and say, this is yours. This is yours. So it's not cute, but you got to keep the lights on. You can't let those leads go nowhere. So I appreciate that. Danielle, you've talked a lot about alignment throughout this entire journey we've been on. Anything else you'd like to add about ensuring alignment before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I was just going to say, Brooke, I've also been there, is like having slight PTSD, but also like really proud of you for all the things you're currently doing, even in that scenario. So I don't think you're like as behind as you might think with this leader coming in. Quite frankly, we're going through right now. What I was going to say is my one thing is don't also assume you have alignment, like blind alignment. Do check-ins. So we just had a huge shakeup on marketing in the last couple months, and it was one of those like something wasn't jiving in our go-to-market motions, and it's like we had all these great aligned plans in our offsite last year. We have like a bi-weekly go-to-market leadership team meeting where we thought we'd talk about friction and get ahead of that, but we're just still missing the mark. And we're also in an industry where, guess what? Volume of MQLs and leads getting into our system is not a great defining metric for how we're going to be doing. So we need to rethink that. And we just, so we have a fresh start, actually, Brooke, where we're starting to reassess some basic foundational things about how we looked at marketing and outbound. We didn't have an outbound team until this year. It's the first year with a functioning outbound, and there's still only 4 people with many more sales reps, I should say. It's still good to have 4 people, but you think you have alignment, and then you have this new team come in who's showing you a different way you could go about it, or helping amplify what wasn't working on some marketing stuff. But so just don't assume you have the alignment. If something feels funky, get on a call with someone, set up. I've had so many discovery calls, or just like, hey, I just need 5 minutes to level set. We're actually going after the same goals here. Just because I'm seeing some communication. This Slack channel, the email, and the meeting update was a little different. So that'd be the biggest point there. And then it's also not too late to look at how you could do it again, right? Like MQLs, again, quantity. And you're probably, I think anyone out there getting all the RevOps materials, at least I'm signed up for somehow on 5,000 channels. It's like, is the MQL dead, right? Is it about account engagement and what you're doing there? So like trying to get more folks at Zappy thinking outside the MQL box. Guess what? I've been there almost 5 years. It didn't work then. It's still not working. It's just not the nature of necessarily our ICP and persona. And quite frankly, if we're getting a big quantity, it's usually low quality of who we need to actually talk to. You have your choosers and your users, and ideally you want to get your choosers to your sales teams. A lot of times the MQL tactics are much more engaging for those users or folks that don't really have a lot of either the budget, the know-how, or the position to make a change or make a decision. So.
I think that I've definitely seen some of those is the MQL dead posts, and there's very strong opinions on both sides of the coin. So it'll be interesting to watch that over the next couple of years. We've talked about 3 super big and important topics: reinventing RevOps strategy, worrying about what metrics we should be worrying about, and then ensuring alignment across revenue generating functions. I would love to give our listeners just a key takeaway from each of you, whichever you think is the most important based on those 3 topics, or maybe we didn't talk about something and you think this is the key takeaway that our members joining us should take away from our Sales RevOps RevFest. I'm going to start with Bailey. What's your key takeaway for our members today?
You know, Danielle really sparked something for me just now with like, don't assume you have alignment. I think that's a mistake I've made before. And I think RevOps, my takeaway across those 3 is RevOps is a job of constant change. We're in change management. As much as you're implementing new things or tweaking, adjusting dials, you need to measure the effectiveness, and any change you make, you need to change manage and make sure people are adapting to new processes or technology. So change management would be mine.
Yep, I think that's definitely an important one. Meg, what about you? Key takeaway for our members?
I really liked how Brooke talked about tying together, you know, the customer journey stages and how you're thinking about entry and exit criteria there. I also am in the e-commerce kind of world, and just, yeah, how you think about what the customer is going through and using your technology, and like how RevOps can impact that was just super powerful for me.
Awesome. Yeah, the customer journey is definitely something that we are no strangers to. Brooke, what about you? Key takeaway?
What I would say in a lot of the topics we talked about is that if you crowdsource the information, there's so many smart RevOps leaders out there. It's the group of women we have here, and that there's, you know, leaning on modern sales pros or some of the other resources I talked about online. And I often have people ask me, you know, where should I start, or what do you recommend? And I kind of have this list of links that I often send people. MSPs at the top of the list. What I would say is things are changing so quickly in RevOps from even a couple years ago. Even the tools, when I thought, oh, I know all the tools. Oh my gosh, this company's acquired another company and they do something totally different now. You know, I feel like I'm not, but like the community is full of so many smart people that want to help each other and very passionate nerds. We're all kind of ops nerds, I'd say. Is that I think when you're struggling, or, you know, like reach out, build a network, find resources online. I originally, when I got into RevOps, did a lot of kind of reading and watched every YouTube video there was about Salesforce and all this other stuff. And that was a long time ago. And there's just so much good, get connected in the community. You're not like, almost every problem you have, someone else is probably having a similar problem. And you know, like nurture that. And, you know, I volunteer for people, you know, if they're newer in their journey, I always offer to help, especially in London, where RevOps is probably kind of as a function 10 years behind where it is when I came from the Silicon Valley. It's just a much newer function that most of Europe is not familiar with. It's kind of growing in London because of the fintechs. But so I'm happy to nurture kind of younger people in their journey. And then also I'm always trying to find people who are ahead of, you know, farther ahead than me, and lean on them for help. And, you know, this group of panelists, I also will probably reach out to at some point because they're a sharp group of ladies. But that's kind of it. My advice really is make sure, you know, all of these people, everyone in your network, just keep learning, you know, be a student. That's my passion, is be a student of RevOps and continue to learn.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like even just posting on LinkedIn, like you will get responses because there are people that are passionate about what you are talking about, whether they're passionate against it, for it, or just like have like super opinionated about it. That's like my first place to go if I have a question. I also used my SDR skills, basically like cold LinkedIn messaging people that I saw talking about RevOps things I wanted to learn about. I got like a 5% response rate. But those people that did respond to me, I now consider them like mentors, and I go to them with questions. And I think, to your point, like this is such a community, and like you're not the first person to have that question. And I love when people message me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I listened to this podcast, or I saw you on this MSP event, and I want to pick your brain about this thing you said, or this thing you said sparked something for me. Like, you know, I'm always down to help people just like you. And I think we have to, and especially with RevOps changing, like my idea might not apply to your business, but maybe it does in like a kind of backwards way. It sparks something for you. So yeah, I just want to double down on that and say like this, community is great. The RevOps community is great, whatever, Slack channels you're involved in. Danielle, you've had some great points. I think you gave us a great key takeaway about alignment. Any other key takeaways for our members today?
Yeah, I want to highlight Brooks, actually. Do not rewrite the wheel, rebuild the wheel. It's something I was actually intrigued with when I got to Zappy. And it's not just a RevOps thing, but it's across the company. And just we had a lot of engineers who at other companies, I'd done integrations with existing tools and whatnot. And I came in trying to like help explain there's another way you could approach this. Most other companies don't build it themselves because it's not part of our core product. So I've done a lot of that, just cross-functional of the helping coach around, like don't rewrite the wheel. I tell my entire team, no shame, Google's best friend. I still use it at this point in my career for questions where I'm like, I probably should know the answer to that. But yeah, those are like the simplistic ways. Keep it basic, keep it simple. But yeah, just a takeaway for RevOps professionals, whether you're an individual contributor or you had a whole team, we are in a unique position where we can oversee a lot of those steps in the journey that other revenue leaders don't. So it's very easy for some of our stakeholders to be really impassioned about why they think something should happen one way. And just remember, we are in a position of that kind of power around seeing all the end-to-end steps and being able to help educate and help build better alignment internally, right? Like ways we sometimes run into friction with sales and CS is because this sales leader made a decision about what he wanted for bookings over here. The CS leader made a decision about what he wanted for customer success value add over here. And guess what? The account manager and the CS rep have to go talk to that same customer, and those are conflicting, right? So having a seat at the table for even if you're catching it in one-on-ones with each of them separately and bringing them together is really powerful. And that's what I love about RevOps, and just like to keep reminding we're in a position where it's okay to speak up when you're seeing those things, and you should.
Yeah, I will also say that Google is your best friend. Even I use ChatGPT to find errors in my Salesforce formulas more than I would like to admit, because it's just become easier now. And like, I think, Danielle, you kind of said it. It's like, there's no shame in not being an expert. If this is your first time being in RevOps during a time of market volatility, go find someone who was in RevOps or was around in tech during a recession and ask them kind of like how they dealt with it, what they saw, what they learned. Because you don't have to be an expert just because you're in RevOps. Having no answer is the best answer if you're leaning towards making something up. That helps nobody. And you want to have the best answer, not just the first thing you can think of. Ladies, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know I've learned a ton. It was great having a panel with as much knowledge as you guys. And I just love a full ladies panel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, this great MSP Fest that we're doing. Thank you to our panelists. And please stay tuned for our next session. Bye, everyone.